moe, violence,
And
scantily clad waifus,
these were the ingredients chosen to create.
the perfect anime.
But Professor Utonium accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction: chemical.
Rape.
Thus,
Goblin Slayer was
born.
Goblin Slayer is problematic. There's a lot that can be said about a show that attempts to rise above its counterparts in an era of copy-pasted, manufactured anime tropes, but only in the most visceral, titillating ways possible. I'm not sure if it says more about the show that it resorted to rape in its very first episode, or the fans and detractors who have resorted to little more than a circular argument about morals and value judgments that will never get anywhere because, well, who's ever going to change their stance on rape? Goblin Slayer exists in a weird space where it achieved infamy seemingly without meaning to. The story is lackluster and generic at best. It's a pretty typical world of D&D inspired heroes that are ranked according to ability who fight monsters categorized by level, apparently. And the titular Goblin Slayer is a man who goes around killing, you guessed it, lots and lots of goblins. But the chief issue I see isn't whether or not the show is repulsive or edgy for featuring sexual assault. These discussions are exactly what shock and awe is supposed to do. Get people to talk about something without really questioning it. I'm going to dive a little deeper than that and get into the nitty-gritty of Goblin Slayer's chief issue. Is all this sexual violence really necessary to tell its main story and build its world? No, it's not. For a longer answer, I'll be drawing from both the anime and the manga, which I have read in its entirety up to the current release. Now, Goblin Slayer's world is part of a bait-and-switch tactic made to lull you into a false sense of security. We're introduced to a D&D style universe where adventuring is a career choice and people are referred to by their class, not their name. The manga itself straight up says that the gods literally rolled dice to decide destiny, and seems to imply that they are actual D&D players. We're introduced to a character named Priestess, who is herself incredibly problematic, but I'll return to her later. She is invited by a bunch of rookie adventurers to root out some goblins, and these kids clearly have no idea what they're doing or what they're getting into, traipsing into the goblin lair with all the innocence and can-do attitude of Ash Ketchum. They even admit they didn't buy any potions or equipment like, say, a life-saving suit of armor. When the fight begins, they are totally unprepared for the enemy and face brutal consequences. People have spoken in defense of this frankly unnecessary drama, saying it's an example of how this world is grim and dark and full of darkness. There is a dissonance between the setup and execution. At the end of the very first episode, we're told that it's actually an extremely common occurrence that goblins annihilate and rape rookie adventurers, and that villages are routinely wiped off the map by goblin hordes. Just in chapter 3 of the manga, we have an old man begging for help against goblin attacks, and no one's even giving him the time of day. Everything is set up to show that goblins are a common issue in this world. Everyone knows about them and everyone knows what they do, except the adventurers who go to kill them, who are punished for not being ready. Even the story of the anime seems to imply that it's kind of their fault for not knowing what they were getting into. But then again, nobody told them what they were getting into. For some undisclosed reason, no one says, but everyone knows, that goblins routinely slaughter unprepared adventurers and rape literal wagons worth of women. Like seriously, at the end of the episode you see an entire wagon of traumatized women who have been broodmares for the goblin hordes. You would think that they would tell other people once they get out, hey, you know, goblins, they rape people. You might want to watch out for that. Yet at the same time, nobody who goes up against the goblins cares about this? Just look at this scene right here. It's not played off as a metaphor, it's portrayed as actually happening. Real people are depicted as walking past real rape victims that are right in front of them, and they run off giggling like they're off to a goblin petting zoo or something. Just look at Guild Girl after the adventurers tell her that they're taking the goblin extermination job, and she knows that they are porcelain adventurers, which means that they are basically the lowest tier. They have no preparation, no prior training, no real experience with adventuring, and she is willingly giving them an incredibly dangerous job. Look at her standing there with that stupid look on her face. She knows. She knows every single one of these underage kids is going to turn into a smear on a cave floor, but she just stands there. She just stands there staring at them like an idiot. And the logic is apparently that she is an NPC, but also a real person. I really don't understand that. Gosh, I really wish I could warn this young boy fresh off the farm that he's bringing 3 young nubile women right into the hands of a pack of rapists who will use them for breeding purposes until their minds are shattered and the goblins dispose of them. If only I didn't have that bomb attached to my neck that kills me if I break character. She expresses some vague sense of remorse or guilt or something that she's sending adventurers to their deaths as part of her day job, but she seems to be stopped by, I don't know, the rules? These unspoken, unbreakable rules that everybody lives by, but nobody seems to remark on or be intelligent enough to try to change. So yeah, if there's anyone to really blame for all the deaths that happened in the first episode, it's literally this person. This one mawkish, gaping idiot who allows actual children to go off unprepared into the nests of rapists and allows them to die and doesn't even try to stop them. Way to make a stand for feminism, huh? You can't have this both ways. This can't be a world dictated by rules that apply to a game where consequences don't exist and the people aren't real, and then turn around and say, actually, these people are real, and the consequences are lethal, and real people are really suffering. Isn't it so dark? Isn't it so very, very grim and dark and grimdark? Aren't you so depressed and disgusted by the very first episode that you can't help but keep watching? Yes, keep watching. See if it will get worse. You can't tell me that goblins are not considered a threat when they very obviously are. Who would live in a world like that? Eventually, people would figure it out. Somebody somewhere would wake up and think to themselves, wait a minute, this sucks. Every time I poke my face out the door, it gets raped by a goblin. Sometimes the door is a goblin. Every time I sit on a bench, it's a goblin. Pretty sure my wife is a goblin. That dog sure is a goblin. He raped my leg just the other day. And God help you if it rains, because you know it, it's raining goblins. But then we get to Goblin Slayer, who I'll refer to as GS from now on, and for some reason his entrance is portrayed as some kind of badass arrival on par with Doom Guy from Doom.
Hey, Vsauce! Michael here.
The entire central conceit of Goblin Slayer's character is that he is the only person in the entire world who takes his job seriously, which is why the deaths of these adventurers serves no real narrative purpose. They're just there to die in order to set up how badass Goblin Boblin is, but only by comparison. If they had treated adventuring as seriously as Gobbo Slobbo here does, then this guy would be a very normal, everyday person. He can't be special unless everyone else is a complete idiot. It's lazy, and calls to mind your typical isekai OP fantasy where only the main character is worth a damn and the others, well, you know.
I'm level 78. I got 14,500 HP. My battle healing skill auto-regenerates 600 points every 10 seconds. We could stand here all day and you wouldn't get anywhere. That's not possible! That's not possible! That's not possible! Wanna bet?
To drive this home, further into the manga there's a sequence where, I kid you not, an entire army of goblins led by a high-level goblin commander is advancing on the village where the guild resides. Gumbo decides to ask for help, which he has never done before up to this point in the story for reasons that aren't exactly clear. In any other tale, this humble act would be rewarded with people actually getting their heads out of their asses and rallying to the town's defense. Instead, the entire adventuring guild rejects him because goblins are just low-level creatures they won't even get paid to kill. Now, if this show was smart, this scene would be a satire on, I don't know, capitalism or something, but it's played off as totally natural that these people are so lazy and self-centered they will not even defend their own lives and homes unless gold is on the line. Nobody even calls them out for being selfish pricks here or anywhere else in the story. Remember, an army of goblins is coming to the very town all of these people are currently living in. The adventurers refuse to help unless they're paid, even though the institution that pays them is in imminent mortal danger. They will all die if they don't fight, but the only thing that gets them to fight is the promise of getting gold like a video game character. My favorite part is this Gaston-looking guy who comes up all, I'm not gonna help unless you give me a reward, like buying me a drink. It's not like I want to save the village with you, Baka. And I suppose we're supposed to sympathize with him since he's the first one to rally the adventurers to the cause, but why are they asking Goblin Slayer to make it a quest? It's not a quest, it's an imminent, direct threat. It's a crisis. It's happening to them whether they accept the quest or not. It's like being asked to sandbag for a flood, but then saying that the flood isn't up on the job board, so you're not going to help even though the flood is coming and is going to kill you right now. Why are these people like this? Why are we expected to take this seriously? None of them are. None of them. Not even the guy who accepts the quest first. Why is he even doing this whole song and dance anyway? Is it gonna hurt his street cred if he shows some kind of human decency? Some kind of slight compassion for his fellow man? I would kick this guy in the nuts. I would kick all of them in the nuts. They're just standing around saying that they are willing to be complicit in the murder of both this guy's childhood friend and the hundreds of other people in the village just because he won't play the same game as everyone else and offer a quest reward. And then again, Gavril Slavine doesn't actually do anything about this. He doesn't seem to care that everyone around him is so morally bankrupt, so utterly stupid that they can't even defend themselves without a quest marker telling them what to do. He doesn't even react to anything. He has no opinion on anything at all in any of these stories except goblins. And yeah, I'm aware that's the point of the story, but it's taken to such a ludicrous extreme that he isn't even really a person anymore. He's just a walking, talking suit of armor that barks about goblins every now and then. Yet for some reason, everyone is obsessed with impressing this guy, because he's the only one out of the entire human race that uses his brain. This page from the manga shows that the gods are actually surprised that this mortal is using his brain and planning ahead. He won't let them roll the dice on his destiny because he's the only person who seems to actually be taking his life into his own hands. A normal person doing a very normal human thing and planning ahead is the one single exception that surprises gods. But wait, there's more. Because of course, I cringed visibly at this scene.
どうもゴブリンスレイヤーさん教わった通り防具を買いました鎖片びらを
Why did she wait this long to get armor? Why did nobody tell her to get armor until now? How is she even on her own without someone else telling her that she might actually need life-saving equipment and then actually make sure that she can get it before she goes into a life-threatening situation? If you read the manga, you can see that all of the adventurers she goes out with all had mentors, all had places they came from that taught them about the outside world, presumably, and yet none of them were educated about goblins, possibly the first enemy they are going to meet as rookie adventurers. Nobody was told about what they might have to do, or what they might have to wear, or what they might have to think about when they're out hunting these creatures, the very first enemies that they are most likely to face in the world, the ones that are everywhere. All of their teachers apparently just kicked them out the door and said, hey, good luck. If you die, there's plenty more where you came from. That doesn't make any sense. Why would they all just accept the fact that nobody helps each other against the most basic of enemies, and that it's all just a crapshoot until you get lucky? Why is this roll of the dice theme so prevalent, and yet nobody seems to notice it? Do they know that the gods are rolling dice? We're told that. Everyone says that the gods roll dice, and this is actually some sort of game to them, but nobody's railing against them, nobody's questioning it. Why was Priestess even let out of her temple if she doesn't even have a spell that can cure goblin poison, which is probably one of the most common problems a rookie adventurer is going to face? Why do we even care if Priestess is still alive and learning how to be a real adventurer? Why is the story seeming to revolve around her as the main character? Well, I'll tell you, it's because the Big G has the personality of an empty paper bag discarded on the side of the road, soaking up a puddle of dead bird juice and cigarette butts. Yeah, we get it, his entire purpose is to kill goblins, and yet that seems to be the only thing that runs through his mind. He has no real goals or ambitions or desires or thoughts, even, besides killing more goblins. But if he really does care so much about killing goblins to the point where no more goblins exist, as seen right here, where he says he would rather that no goblins existed than him needing to go kill them, why doesn't he care that nobody else cares about goblins? If Gorbo Slorbo actually cares about this situation, why didn't he, I don't know, punch this guy in the dick for being a dick? At the very least, he could have expressed some disappointment in his fellow man for all being heartless bastards who deserve to die because they're going to leave this village to be burned to the ground, the women to be raped, the goblins to multiply and do this to more people just because they won't get paid? But he just stands there. He just stands there, literally just stands there like a stuffed mannequin until Guild Girl comes along and says, "Hey boys, I got your dosh right here. Don't worry, you're gonna get rewarded properly for being actual decent human beings." And this is portrayed as the natural state of the world. Nobody cares that nobody cares. If Grabbed by the Ghoulies cares about human life, why hasn't he been training the village to fight goblins when he isn't around? Maybe left them some supplies or traps to take care of themselves, maybe? Gave them goblin hunting tips? At the very least trained some kind of goblin militia or something? Why should we care when nobody else in this world does? How are we supposed to even view these atrocities as bad things if nobody else seems to think they're that bad either? If you've ever heard of Warhammer 40k, you would know that the humans in that setting are about as pants-on-head stupid as you'll ever find, but even that universe has a somewhat reasonable explanation for why nobody cares when an entire planet is ganked by aliens. For one thing, there's already like 5 trillion people in the galaxy, and also no bureaucracy can hope to keep track of an entire galaxy anyway, so a bunch of people are gonna end up slipping through the cracks. That's just the breaks. But in the world of Goblins 2 Electric Boogaloo, we're just told nobody cares about goblins. But why? Why does nobody care about the goblins when the anime and the manga and everyone around us has given us a whole litany of reasons staring us in the face for why goblins should be the biggest threat humanity has ever faced? You know you screwed up when Warhammer, the most insane, overdone, grimderpy of grimderp settings ever made, actually has a greater justification for indifference to horror than your pathetic stab at dark fantasy could ever hope to have. And yet for all that, the story doesn't even really focus on Gobbledygook and his quest to kill goblins. The main thrust of the story isn't to stop the goblins from destroying the world, or stop society from eating itself alive while goblins pick us apart. It's to make the guys smile or something. Later on, he gets a party of adventurers who, frankly, are just as bland and dull as the rest of the cast. The elf girl is basically only there to be a Genki glomper, I think is the term. She glomps people. She hugs people a lot. She like yells at them and is just really exuberant all the time for no reason. She's been alive for 2,000 years, by the way, and yet she didn't know that goblins rape people. And also that they rape elves. Let me repeat that. She has been alive for 2,000 years, and she didn't know that goblins rape elves. What is going on in these people's heads? And anyway, this elf girl just wants him to have a real adventurer because she's pissed off that he doesn't get excited about things like she does. The lizard shaman is just kind of there to be the lizard shaman-y guy. The dwarf guy is there to be the wise grizzled guy because that's every adventuring party needs that. And then Priestess, she's basically, the entire point of Priestess's character is that she wants Goblin Senpai to notice her for some reason. I guess because she's obsessed with him now that he saved her from being raped. Except I don't care. She's a vacant, dead-eyed walking stereotype whose sole purpose in life is to try and make G-Force have fun, or something. She certainly doesn't care about the goblins. In this page, she actually reminisces about the party that was killed in the first chapter, and she paints it in a surprisingly positive light that they were all brutally raped and murdered by goblins, because, I don't know, if they had all actually survived and known what they were doing, then she wouldn't have met gynecological specialist. Like, wow, you're kind of a cunt. My biggest problem with Priestess is that she's essentially a non-entity in this story. She's there just to be the bland, moe, unassuming novice who learns about the world with the audience, and most tellingly, in a story that seems to revolve around misuse of sexual assault, the fallout of said assault is handled in a very, very creepy way. For the reasons I mentioned above, nobody should actually be unprepared for goblins. They should be a constant menace at the back of everyone's mind, well aware that literally any woman they travel with is at risk of rape and impregnation by goblins. Oh yeah, did I forget that? Yeah, the entire goblin species is actually required to rape people or they'll go extinct because there are no female goblins. So it's basically a big excuse to have as much rape as possible.
The rape wasn't even good. I did not think that was a good rape.
And yet this party full of women adventurers, and this one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, is basically blamed by both the in-universe people and the story in general for being unprepared for getting raped. I mean, how hard could it be? Just get some flex tape, plug those holes right up, ladies, boom, no more rape. So yeah, this whole thing smacks of victim blaming because nobody will help these poor fools who keep dying. It's like giving a small child the keys to a car and then blaming them for not using a booster seat when they crash it. What makes it even worse is Priestess's virginity, the fact that she wasn't raped in the first chapter. You know, lucky her, she gets saved by Gary Stu, and wow, lucky her, she gets to go and have adventures while the only friend who made it out alive is just literally put on a bus. Goodbye, fighter, we hardly knew you. I mean, literally, we got no backstory on you, you were just there, and then you died. I mean, you didn't die, but you might as well have. You're dead to us. You're dead to us. Woman who has actually been raped and sexually assaulted, and now actually has a story to her arc that involves, I don't know, overcoming this trauma, and maybe becoming another Goblin Slayer who wants to kill goblins because he also was traumatized. Why is it, this just came to me, why is it that Gobble Babo is the only guy in the entire world, out of all these people who have been raped and traumatized and victimized by goblins, he's the only one, by the way. He is the only one who actually gets off his ass and decides to do something about the goblins. Everyone else, their villages are wiped out every other weekend. People watch their families get slaughtered mercilessly by goblins, and yet this one guy, this one dude, out of the entire human race, since time immemorial, they actually say that, since time immemorial, this has been happening, and Goblin and good old Gorbachev here is the only person who has ever gotten the wherewithal together to say, wait a minute, getting killed by goblins kinda sucks. I'm gonna actually do something about that. Can someone just tell me why that is? There is no in-universe reason why anybody else could not have also become the Goblin Slayer. Did I mention he's also really handsome? Like every girl who sees his face is like, oh my god, I want to sit on that face. I want to sit on that featureless, blank, emotionless face. I want to do stuff to that. But this guy is jacked. Okay, he's jacked. He's super capable, he's super handsome, he's just lonely and brooding enough that all the girls are like attracted to him low-key. Like the Pope, okay? This girl right here, I'm gonna introduce her later properly, but right now just know she's basically the Pope. And even she wants to bang him. She like comes onto him in this really creepy scene right here. And this is ridiculous. Let me just tell you about this right now. Later in the story, Garbage Tosser is nearly killed, and a resurrection spell is cast to keep him alive. But the only way the spell can work is, I shit you not, if he literally sleeps next to a pure virgin maiden. Not having sex with her, he just has to sleep next to her, and also apparently she has to be naked. Did I mention she's 15? Priestess is actually 15 years old. Like, they say that. She's 15 years old and she's sleeping naked with a strange man because her virginity gives her magical powers. That's right, kiddos. The only reason Priestess wasn't raped in the first episode was purely because if she was, then she would have been damaged goods. And the gods hate little girls who don't follow directions and not get raped. I mean, seriously. If the gods really are just D&D players, I'm pretty sure they're running by the rules of Fatal or something. This weird random laser focus on Priestess and her unbroken sexuality is just never remarked on. Why do they need a virgin? Why isn't everyone in the world dead set on defending virgins to the death? Like, surely in a world where virginity gives you superpowers, that let you bring people back from the brink of death, virgins would become a hot commodity. Wouldn't they just have a big group of virgin priestesses on hand to perform this miracle spell whenever they need it, because this is an incredibly dangerous world, so it probably would find a lot of utility? This is sounding like some kind of incel's nightmare, where not having sex is actually enforced by law, so they can just have big contingents of magical healing virgins on hand. Yet, like everything else in this strange, violent, horrible world full of horrible people who are never genuinely acknowledged as being horrible people, it's all just window dressing. I could go on. I could go on and on and on. There are so many small plot holes, inconsistencies, just flat out strange and stupid ideas in this story that it could fill easily an hour's worth of video, and I might do a second part if I actually get the wherewithal together to do that. But suffice to say, this anime does not deserve the infamy it has gotten. It does not even deserve the fame it has gotten. It is a confused mess of clashing ideas. It's hardcore and gritty, but it's also lighthearted and fun, and stuff happens that is awful, and yet it's all of game. But it's not a game because people really die, but nobody seems to acknowledge that it's a game, even though they talk like it's a game. The main character is badass because everybody else is just so racked with stupidity and incompetence that he makes them look bad by comparison. All the girls want to bang him. For all his intelligence, he doesn't actually do anything particularly intelligent that will lead to the completion of his goals, if he even has any, beyond just killing goblins. That's all it's been for like 20 chapters. He just wanders around killing goblins. They bring up this one plot point about demons destroying the world, but they kind of just drop that so that Goblin Slayer can kill more goblins, and so he can sleep naked next to Priestess for whatever friggin' reason. Anyway, I've been working on this video for like 8 hours, so I'm just gonna go ahead and call it here. You guys can go ahead and watch it if you want. For some strange reason, a lot of the episodes are up for free on YouTube, which is a little bit weird to me given how incredibly violent this is. But, you know, they censor the titties, so that makes it okay, I guess. They also censor a lot from the manga. Like, the anime just completely cuts out a lot of the really hardcore stuff that the manga shows, which makes me really question why they're adapting it in the first place, and really just adds to the confusion of whether or not this is actually supposed to be a serious story. So, anyway, that was my first anime review I've ever done, and hopefully the last, because, oh god, do I hate anime with a seething passion, but I'm sure there's plenty more where that came from. 1 like equals 1 prayer for every goblin killed by Goblin Slayer. Subscribe for more unnecessarily long reviews about shows where people are sexually violated for no good reason. Because anime has destroyed our way of life.